call this meeting to order. This is the Air Pollution Control District budget hearing meeting. So I'm calling this meeting to order at 5:29. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Bush. I would like to remind those members of the public that are joining us by teleconference to please select your preferred language using the interpretation button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that members Gloria, Lawson, Reamer, Sanchez, and Vargas have notified us that they will be absent from today's proceedings. All remaining members are participating in person. With that, Member Birkbeck Garcia. Here. Member Elo Rivera.
Present.
Member Gomez.
Here.
Member Martinez.
Martinez present.
Member Medina.
Medina here.
Vice Chair Shu.
Shu here.
Chair Bush.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, and Madam Clerk, we'll move on to the non-agenda public comment. Could you please provide the public testimony instructions?
Thank you, Chair Bush. If there are any members of the public that wish to address the board here in the chamber, please go ahead and make your way to the podium now. Any members of the public that are joining us via teleconference, go ahead and press the raise hand feature button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or press *9 now to address the board. Seeing no movement in the for non-agenda public communication. Seeing no members of the public moving here in the chamber and no hands raised on our teleconference, there are no members of the public that wish to address the board on this item.
Great, thank you. Then we will go ahead and get started with the public hearing. So the public hearing on the budget is now open. And this is for the Air Pollution Control Officer's proposed budget for the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District fiscal year 23-24. Madam Clerk, could you provide the public testimony instructions again?
Thank you, Chair Bush. If there are any members of the public that wish to address the board on this item that are here in the chamber, please fill out a speaker slip that you can find here at the front of the chamber and submit it to the clerk at this time. If there are members of the public that wish to join via teleconference, please go ahead and press *9 at this time or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Your testimony will be heard at the conclusion of the staff presentation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And with that, we'll go ahead and start with the staff presentation by our Air Pollution Control Officer.
Thank you and good evening, Chair Bush and board members. Today, we're conducting a public hearing to receive and consider public comments on the Air Pollution Control Officer's proposed budget for fiscal year 2023-24. The proposed budget document, which can be found on the district's website, details the spending plan for the district under the direction of the governing board. The recommended budget is balanced and reflects a proposed total of $116 million in revenues and expenditures for fiscal year 2023-24. There's a second public hearing scheduled for Thursday, June 8th at 2 p.m. to conclude public testimony on the recommended budget and formally adopt the final budget. Next slide, please. We wanted to start by going over some of the significant accomplishments achieved during fiscal year 2022-23. The district completed the comprehensive monitoring plan as required by AB 423 to document the process used to determine placement of regional and community ambient air monitoring stations and which pollutants they measure. The community air monitoring plan for the international border community was also completed in partnership with residents and stakeholders to identify priority concerns with air pollution and potential locations to establish air monitoring sites in the community. As of March, the district has provided over $5 million in grant funding to incentivize clean air projects, resulting in nearly 350 tons of emission reductions achieved over the life of the projects. Additionally, the district has grant agreements in place for another $42 million in incentive funding that will provide significant additional emission reduction benefits once those projects are completed. And finally, additionally, the district approved a supplemental environmental project, or SEP, as part of a violation settlement that will provide over $4.5 million for a tree planting program, which will prioritize increasing the number of trees planted in the portside and international border environmental justice communities. And finally, we published an interactive mapping tool to show permitted stationary sources that can create elevated health risks, such as cancer, in communities across the region. Next slide, please. Additional accomplishments achieved during fiscal year 2022-23 include adoption of the 2022 Regional Air Quality Strategy, or RAQS, which is the plan to demonstrate how the region will further reduce air pollution to meet state health-based standards for ground level ozone, commonly known as smog. We also adopted new and amended rules, including Rule 40, revising district fees to continue progress towards cost recovery, and Rule 69.7 to control emissions from landfill gas flares. We also successfully implemented an in-house after-hours complaint response plan where district inspectors are available 24/7 to respond to air quality complaints, and expanded the district's robust mobile source enforcement program to include state regulations applicable to commercial harbor craft, which are a significant source of pollution in the region. And to further increase transparency and promote public engagement, the district is now posting information about the nature, date, location, and resolution of air quality complaints investigated by district staff. Next slide, please. So next, I wanted to talk about our goals and objectives for the coming fiscal year. District staff develop goals and objectives to provide a roadmap for our work for the coming fiscal year. These goals and objectives have been informed by the ongoing policy direction from the governing board, staff input, and existing and expanded program requirements. This recommended budget reflects the district's ongoing commitment to its goals of promoting air quality, public health, environmental justice and equity, public engagement and transparency, and operational excellence. More details on these goals and the specific objectives to support achievement of them can be found on pages 6 and 7 in the fiscal year 23-24 budget document, which is posted on the district's website. And as discussed in the meeting earlier today, the district has embarked on a long-term strategic planning process with the governing board, staff, and stakeholders to guide the development of programs and sustainable funding for the next several years in support of its vision of clean air for all. Next slide, please. As the new fiscal year approaches, there are some program areas that the district must continue to monitor. This recommended budget represents a plan that will ensure that critical services continue to be provided while also positioning the district to mitigate potential risks. First, in response to state mandates, the district is greatly expanding the number of stationary sources and number of pollutants for which it conducts an annual emission inventory from approximately 200 to over 4,400 facilities per year. While this mandate will give the district a much more complete inventory of local sources of air pollution, it requires additional resources to implement. This recommended budget thus includes one additional staff position to help address this requirement, as well as funding for continued support of an electronic reporting system for emission inventory data. Next, as a result of EPA's 2021 redesignation of the region to severe ozone non-attainment, the district anticipates an increase in permitting requirements under the federal Title V operating permit program. There are currently about 30 Title V sources in the region, and this change is expected to increase the number of facilities subject to Title V requirements by potentially up to 30 additional sources. This mandate will also require additional resources to handle increased permitting activities, and the district has worked to enhance capacity by providing training to more staff members for the process for evaluating Title V permit applications. And the governing board and district have made great progress on cost recovery for the past 2 fiscal years. While we have made great progress, it's imperative to continue to keep pace with inflationary cost increases and continue moving towards full cost recovery given the statutory cap on fee increases. The additional resources required to implement increased emission inventory and Title V requirements will also need to be considered as part of future cost recovery planning. Additionally, there are limitations on grant revenues that the district receives, including insufficient administration funding to cover the full cost of state and federally mandated programs, such as the Regional Air Quality Monitoring Program, the cost to implement pass-through incentive grant programs, and the continuing expansion of the AB 617 Community Air Protection Program. This requires the district to supplement these grant revenues with other funding sources, primarily vehicle registration fee revenue. Lastly, the anticipated costs and resources needed to scope, procure, implement, and maintain a new financial system separate from the County of San Diego's system, are expected to be significant and will potentially require new ongoing revenue sources. This recommended budget includes additional funding for the reserve account to continue to set aside funds for this projected expense. District staff will continue to work with the County of San Diego to identify a cost-effective approach to meet this need. Strategies to address these challenges will be key components of the district's upcoming long-term strategic planning process. I will now turn it over to Deputy Director Mike Watt to walk through the rest of the budget presentation. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Paula. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Chair Bush and governing board members. The district's recommended budget summary and schedule of fees for fiscal year 23-24 was posted on the district's website on April 11th. Notice of its availability and opportunity to submit written comments online, by email, or at the public hearings was mailed directly to every air quality permit holder, sent to subscribers of the district's email notification service in English and Spanish, and posted on the district's social media accounts. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. I'll start by going over the revenues and expenditures by classification. These revenue and expenditure classifications are described in detail in the district's recommended budget that is posted on the district's website. The district's total revenues for next fiscal year are estimated at $116 million. The largest source of district revenue is intergovernmental revenues at $81.8 million. Intergovernmental revenues are state and federal grant funds, most of which is pass-through funding for projects to improve air quality and public health throughout the region. Another primary source of revenue is licenses, permits, and franchises at $10.4 million. This revenue is derived from permit application fees, permit renewal fees, and other fees paid by customers for district services. The estimated amount for this revenue category includes cost recovery fee updates adopted by the governing board. $16.6 million in other financing sources is classified as a revenue source and is the transfer of monies between district operating fund, vehicle registration fund, and various grant program funds to cover district costs for program implementation. This is offset by expenditures showing as operating transfers out on the following slide. Next slide, please. The district total expenditures for next fiscal year are also estimated to be $116 million, reflecting a balanced budget. The largest expenditure for the district is other charges at $59.4 million. Other charges are pass-through incentive grant funds to support clean air projects, such as Carl Moyer, the AB 617 program, Clean Cars for All, and other programs. This recommended funding is in addition to $42 million in clean air projects already under contract with the district from previous years. I'll provide some additional information about these clean air grant programs later in the presentation. The second largest expenditure is salaries and benefits at $27.8 million. The district staff provides a multitude of services to protect the public and the environment from the harmful effects of air pollution, which I'll also summarize as part of this presentation. The $16.6 million in operating transfers out reflects the expenditure side of the transfer of monies between district funds shown as other financing sources on the previous slide. Next slide, please. To ensure critical services are provided and to meet district goals and objectives, there are 177 total full-time equivalent staff years, or FTE, included in the fiscal year 23-24 recommended budget. This includes 175 existing positions and 2 recommended new positions. Recent changes in state emission inventory requirements, as well as an enhancement of APCD's work in local environmental justice communities, have greatly increased the work of the engineering team and the Office of Environmental Justice. To help address these programmatic changes, the recommended budget includes funding for 1 air quality specialist in engineering to support implementation of new requirements adopted by the California Air Resources Board for emissions inventories, and 1 air quality specialist in the Office of Environmental Justice to support continued implementation and expansion of the Community Air Protection Program in environmental justice areas. Next slide, please. In this section, we'll look at the fund balance summary for the district's general funds and incentive funds. The blue column shows the projected fund balance for this fiscal year, and the green columns show the recommended changes and the estimated ending funding balance for next fiscal year. The committed account for operating reserve includes approximately 2 months of operating expenditure reserves that could be used if necessary to maintain core programs and services in cases of unforeseen economic revenue shortfalls. For fiscal year 23-24, this reserve fund balance is recommended to be increased by $650,000 based on analysis of district ongoing operating expenditures. The committed account for facilities could be used for facilities and fleet improvements or replacements as necessary. No changes to this fund account are being recommended as part of the fiscal year 23-24 budget. The committed account for financial systems replacement was established as part of last fiscal year's budget process and could be used for financial system replacement as necessary as a result of the district's separation from the County of San Diego. For fiscal year 23-24, this account is recommended to be increased by $250,000 to continue growing the fund for a potential initial contribution to be used to scope, procure, and implement a new financial system replacement. As funds are available in future budgets, the intent is to continue adding to this account on an annual basis, since the anticipated costs for a financial system replacement are expected to exceed the initial contributions. The incentive fund balances are designated for use based on specific grant program requirements, which I'll review in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. Next, I'll provide some additional information on the district's special revenue fund budget, which for fiscal year 23-24 is estimated at $77.1 million. As mentioned previously, this is primarily comprised of state and federal grant funds, most of which is pass-through funding for incentive projects to improve air quality and public health. Funding from the state's AB 617 Community Air Protection Program at $28.6 million and the Carl Moyer Program at $25.6 million make up the majority of the recommended budget from these special revenue funds. Revenue derived from a $4 vehicle registration fee paid annually by San Diego County motorists makes up $12.8 million of the recommended special revenue fund budget, with state grant funding for other pass-through programs such as Clean Cars for All, Farmer, and GMERP accounting for the remainder. In addition to providing funding for emission reduction projects, the special revenue fund budget also includes funding to help partially offset district costs to administer these incentive programs and to implement community monitoring and environmental justice activities. Next slide, please. The Air Quality Improvement Trust Fund is made up of revenues from vehicle registration fees and is used to support district programs for the reduction of motor vehicle emissions and for related activities necessary for the attainment or maintenance of state or federal air quality standards. The fund is used to finance the district's mobile source compliance program, which enforces state mobile source regulations pursuant to a memorandum of understanding with the California Air Resources Board, and to help offset costs to administer state incentive funding grant programs. The fund is also used to directly incentivize projects that reduce air pollution from motor vehicles and mobile equipment, such as electric vehicle charging infrastructure and the retirement of older, high-polluting vehicles. To a lessening extent, these funds have also been used to offset administrative costs of other district regulatory programs, such as air quality monitoring, due to the fact that the region's air quality non-attainment status is largely driven by motor vehicle emissions. Next slide, please. The Clean Air for All funds are made up primarily of pass-through grant funding from the state to incentivize projects that reduce emissions through replacement of older, highly polluting equipment. Project proposals are solicited annually, and funding is allocated through a competitive process based on specific program eligibility requirements. The Carl Moyer Program provides funding to reduce emissions from a wide range of vehicle and equipment types across various sectors, including on-road vehicles, off-road equipment, marine vessels, locomotives, and lawn and garden equipment. 50% of Carl Moyer Program funds are required to be spent on projects in environmental justice communities. The Funding Agricultural Replacement Measures for Emission Reduction Programs, or FARMER, provides funding for projects that reduce air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions in the agricultural sector. The Goods Movement Emission Reduction Program, or GMERP, provides funding for projects that reduce emissions and associated health risk from freight movement. And the AB 617 Community Air Protection Program provides funding for the same types of projects eligible under the Moyer program, but this funding is specifically dedicated for projects that benefit under-resourced environmental justice communities. AB 617 incentive funds can also be used for community-identified projects that may not be eligible for Moyer funding, such as the zero-emission port truck pilot project that the district is currently implementing. In addition to this incentive project funding, the AB 617 implementation funds included in the recommended budget provide funding for program staffing, capital expenditures for air monitoring equipment, and services and supplies needed to measure air pollutants within under-resourced communities and help to support the district's Office of Environmental Justice. Each of these state grant programs also includes some administrative funding to help partially offset district implementation costs. Next slide, please. The Clean Cars for All Fund provides lower emission vehicles or transportation alternatives such as transit passes or electric bicycles for lower income residents in under-resourced communities who trade in their higher polluting vehicles. The program is first come, first served, and the district has contracted with a local community-based organization for project outreach and administration. The program can provide up to $12,000 towards the purchase of low and zero emission vehicles or transportation alternatives and is expected to launch locally this summer. Next slide, please. Now let's review the district's recommended operational budget, which for fiscal year 23-24 is estimated at $38.9 million and consists primarily of salaries and benefits for district staff, as well as services and supplies to help ensure that critical services are provided to meet district goals and objectives. I'll provide a brief overview of each of the district's program areas along with some budget highlights. Next slide, please. The Support Services Group is made up of 26 staff positions and provides information technology, permit processing, public information request, accounting, budget, and facilities and fleet services to all programs within the district. The fiscal year 23-24 recommended budget includes funding to replace aging district fleet pool vehicles with new electric vehicles and to expand the fleet and public vehicle charging infrastructure at the district facility by leveraging grant funding available from SDG&E. As mentioned previously, the budget also includes a recommendation to increase the operating fund and financial system reserves. Next slide, please. The Administrative Services Group has 13 staff positions that provide public information office, human resources, legal, and executive and management services to all programs within the district. This group also includes the Office of Environmental Justice, which develops strategies to engage stakeholders and under-resourced communities in district policy, budget development, and priority setting to improve air quality in communities that experience disproportionate burdens from exposure to air pollution. The recommended budget includes the use of AB 617 implementation grant funding for the Office of Environmental Justice staff costs, including a new air quality specialist to support continued implementation and expansion of the Community Air Protection Program. The recommended budget also includes funding for development of popular education materials on air pollution issues, mini grants to engage community-based organizations in district processes and decision-making, and graphic artist services for continued enhancement of district outreach efforts in support of the environmental justice framework and the public participation plan. Next slide, please. The district's engineering team consists of 27 staff positions that evaluate permit applications from businesses and facilities, quantify air pollutant emissions from permitted sources, and implement the state-mandated air toxic hotspots program to reduce toxic emissions from facilities and associated public health risks in communities. The budget includes funding for a recommended new air quality specialist position to support implementation of expanded state requirements for emission inventories, as well as funding for continued support of the online emissions inventory reporting system to help streamline submission and evaluation of facility emissions data. Next slide, please. Sorry. No, I've got it. The compliance group is made up of 44 staff positions that work to ensure compliance with air pollution control requirements via inspections of regulated facilities and diesel-powered mobile equipment, and by conducting inspections of building renovation and demolition operations where asbestos may be involved. They also respond to complaints about emissions of air contaminants and provide education and outreach on how to comply with air quality requirements. The fiscal year 23-24 recommended budget includes funding to continue the after-hours complaint response program So district inspectors are available 24/7 to respond to air quality complaints, as well as funding to replace aging district inspection vehicles with new electric vehicles. Next slide, please. The monitoring section is made up of 42 staff positions to operate a network of outdoor monitoring stations to measure regional air quality, as well as neighborhood scale air monitoring in under-resourced communities. They also perform air pollutant modeling for permit applications and issue daily air quality forecasts and reports, and if necessary, air pollution health advisories and alerts. The recommended budget includes use of AB 617 implementation grant funding to support community monitoring in the Portside and International Border environmental justice areas, as well as services to facilitate participation of steering committees in these communities to help guide the development and implementation of community emission reduction plans. Next slide, please. The source testing team is made up of 6 air pollution chemists that measure emissions from permitted facilities to verify compliance with emission limits. In addition to conducting these tests directly, the team also witnesses independent companies performing source tests to ensure compliance with methods, rules, and permit conditions, and reviews test data related to facility health risk assessments and risk reduction plans. There are approximately 230 source tests performed at various facilities annually throughout the region. Next slide, please. There are 12 staff positions in the Mobile Incentives and Planning Group, and this team is responsible for allocating the pass-through incentive grant funding discussed earlier in the presentation to reduce mobile source emissions. This team also prepares and updates the district's federal and state clean air plans and reviews other regional projects as part of the California Environmental Quality Act process to identify potential air quality impacts and mitigation strategies. The recommended budget includes federal grant funding to deploy the first fully electric harbor tugboat in the United States, which is expected to become operational on San Diego Bay later this year. The recommended budget also includes funding for continued implementation of the Portside Air Quality Improvement and Relief, or PAIR program, which provides portable air purifiers and indoor air monitors to residents in the Portside area. Next slide, please. The rule development team consists of 5 staff positions who work to develop new and revised rules to reduce emissions from stationary sources. As part of this process, the team conducts outreach and workshops to solicit information and feedback from regulated industries, residents, and other stakeholders on potential new or revised rules. The recommended budget includes funding for consultant services to help support socioeconomic impact analyses and California Environmental Quality Act requirements associated with new and amended rule proposals. Next slide, please. The clerk of the board has 2 staff positions that provide support to both the APCD governing board and hearing board, including serving as meeting parliamentarian, managing meeting agendas and minutes, and maintaining official records for both bodies. The recommended budget includes funding to provide support with implementing the district's legislative program. Next slide, please. The district's recommended budget for fiscal year 23-24 is available for review on the district's website. Anyone interested in providing feedback can submit comments by visiting the APCD Governing Board webpage, sending an email to apcdpubliccomment@sdapcd.org, or providing comments at today's hearing or the next budget hearing scheduled for June 8. Next slide, please. The requested actions for today are to open a public hearing, receive and consider public comments on the Air Pollution Control Officer's recommended budget for fiscal year 23-24, and to find that the requested action is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. Next slide, please. This concludes our presentation, and we're available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Ooh, that was a mouthful, huh, Michael? No, thank you so much, staff, for all of your hard work on this and your presentation. Appreciate that. So I'm going to turn it over to to Madam Clerk to see if there's any members of the public that wish to address the board on this item before we get into questions and comments from our board.
Thank you, Chair Bush. We have 2 members of the public that wish to address the board on this item. Our first member of the public is Nicholas Paul. You can go ahead and come to the podium now. You will have 3 minutes to address the board, and you can begin by stating your name for the record.
Hello, everyone. Nicholas Paul with EHC. I have just 2 really quick comments. one, there's a lot to celebrate in this budget, right? The proposal for 2 new staff members to support the existing APCD team, additional funding for incentives. And again, there's a lot to celebrate in this budget. My 2 comments have to do, the first has to do with the report itself. And, I think, again, I feel like this is kind of becoming a trend. Community members have learned to expect, the transparency and commitment to that. APCDs continue to show that's a value that they continue to build off of. And one of the issues, as I was kind of going through this report, was distinguishing of the revenues that are available, which ones of those funds are discretionary and which of those funds are legally bound to be used for specific items. And so one of the recommendations that EHC would like to propose, and again, for future budget reports, is an explicit explanation of these are discretionary funds, and this is how we are allocating these funds, and we're funneling them for these specific programs. Doing that would be a very powerful change for future budget reports. The second, it has to do with specific funding. One of our concerns is that as APCD continues to grow its presence in our most impacted communities here in the county, the role of the Office of Environmental Justice is going to continue to grow. And so currently, I believe the office is made up about 2 staff members, and they're doing an incredible job. But they're also holding a lot of hats, right? We heard in the beginning, in the first hearing, a brief explanation of applications for EPA grants that they're taking on. We're talking about facilitation of our AB 617 communities, our CSCs. Identifying a way to sustainably fund and grow that team is so important. And that may be a task for the Public Policy Committee, the Standing Committee, but that's something that should be a priority moving forward, and an issue that I'd like to kind of elevate for this body today. And we need to find some way to increase staffing for that office, because they're doing incredible work and their work is so important. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we will have David Yao with the Port of San Diego. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on behalf of the
You will
Port.
have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on behalf of the
You will
Port.
have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on
Mr.
behalf
Yao,
of the
you will
Port.
have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record. Mr. Yao?
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on
Mr.
behalf
Yao,
of the
you will
Port.
have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record. Mr. Yao, you're unmuted. Mr. Yao?
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on
Mr.
behalf
Yao,
of the
you will
Port.
have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record. Mr. Yao, you're unmuted. Mr. Yao? Mr. Yao, are you able
Good
to hear
afternoon,
us?
Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on
Mr.
behalf
Yao,
of the
you will
Port.
have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating
we
your
wanna
name
move
for the
on to
record.
come back
Mr.
to
Yao,
this
you're
one?
unmuted. Mr. Yao, are you able
Good
to hear
afternoon,
us?
Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on
Mr.
behalf
Yao,
of the
you will
Port.
have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating
We
your
want to
final
move on
for the
to
record.
the next
Mr. Yao, you're
item.
unmuted.
Okay.
Mr. Yao, are you able
Good
to hear
afternoon,
us?
Chair and board members. For the record, my name is David Yao on
Mr.
behalf
Yao,
of the
you will
courts.
have 3 minutes to address the
We'll
board.
go ahead and move
Please
on
begin
to
by
the
stating your
member
final for the record.
comments
Mr. Yao,
and
you're
questions.
unmuted.
And if we
Mr.
do get
Yao,
them
Yao,
back
are you able
Good
to
online,
hear
afternoon,
us?
Chair and board members. For
Madam
the
Clerk, please
record,
let
my
us
name
know
is
and
David
we'll
Yao
go ahead
on
and go
Mr.
back to
behalf
Yao,
of the
you will
courts.
have 3 minutes
With that,
to address the
we'll go
board.
ahead and move
Please
on
begin
to
by
the
stating your final for the
member
record.
comments
Mr. Yao,
and
you're
questions.
unmuted.
And if we
Mr.
do
Yao,
get them
Yao,
back
are you able to
Good
hear
afternoon,
us?
Chair and
yes,
board
Mayor
members.
Medina,
For
Madam
the
Clerk, please
record,
let
my
us
name
know and
is
we'll
David Yao
go ahead and
on
go back
Mr.
to
Yao,
you.
you will have 3 minutes
With
to
that,
address the
we'll go
board.
ahead and move
Please
on
begin
to
by
the
stating your final
Thank
for
you
the
for
record.
comments
Mr.
and
Yao, you're
budget.
questions.
unmuted.
And
It's
if we
great
do
to
get
Mr.
them
see
Yao,
back
are you able to
online,
hear us?
yes, Mayor
so
Medina,
much.
Madam Clerk, please let us know and we'll
And
Yao
go
Mr.
ahead and go
the
back to
Yao,
you.
you will have 3 minutes
With
to
that,
address the
we'll go
board.
ahead and move
Please
on
begin by
to the
stating your
Brian,
final
thank
for
you
the
for
record. Mr.
putting
Yao,
together
you're
the budget to
unmuted.
see that
Mr.
rate.
Yao, Yao, are you able to
Area
hear
that
us?
we
yes, Mayor
budget
Medina,
might
Madam
have
Clerk, please let us
outside
know.
trouble and
Go ahead and
have
go
the
back to
Yao,
you.
elected
you will
officials
have
work
3 minutes
With
to
that,
address the
board
board.
member
coordination.
comments and
Please begin
questions.
by
Fund
stating your
balance.
final
Brian, thank
for
you
the
for
record. Mr.
comments
Yao,
to
and
you're
see that,
unmuted.
to see
questions.
that
Mr.
rate.
Yao,
Because
Yao, are
I'm
you able to
project
hear
is
us?
Yes, Mayor
project
Medina,
revenue
Madam
have
Clerk, please let us
outside
know.
trouble and
Go ahead
have
and
the
go back to
elected
you.
Yao, you will
officials
have 3
With
minutes
make
that,
to address the
millions
board
of
member
board.
comments
Please
the
begin
questions.
by
fund
stating
balance.
your
Go ahead and
final
move
Thank
on
you.
to
for the
Fund
member
record.
balance
Mr.
comments
to
Yao,
and
you're
see that, to
questions.
unmuted.
see that
Mr.
rate.
Yao,
Because
Yao, are you able to hear us?
Yes, Mayor
project
Medina,
revenue
Madam
have
Clerk, please let
outside
us know.
trouble and
Go ahead and go
Mr.
back to
Yao,
elected
you.
you will
officials
have 3
With
minutes
that,
to address the
board
board.
member
engineering
comments and
Please
rules of
begin
fund
by
questions.
stating your
balance.
Go
final
ahead
Thank
for
you.
and
the
go
Fund
to
record.
balance
Mr.
comments
to
Yao,
and
you're
see that
questions.
maybe
unmuted.
it's not as
Mr. Yao, are you able to
aggressive
hear us?
when
Yes, Mayor
elected
Medina, Madam
revenue
Clerk, please let
outside
us know.
trouble. What that
Go ahead and
means
go back to you.
in particular
With that, board
engineering
member comments and
rules of
questions.
fund
Go ahead
balance.
and move
Thank
on
you.
to
Fund
member
balance
comments
to
and
see that
questions.
maybe it's not as
Mr. Yao, are you able to
aggressive
hear us?
when
Yes, Mayor
elected
Medina, Madam
revenue
Clerk, please let us
outside
know.
trouble. What that
Go ahead and
means
go back to you.
in particular
With that, board member
engineering
comments and
rules of
questions.
fund
Go ahead
balance.
and move on to
So my
member
question
comments
is
and
that
questions.
maybe it's not as
Mr. Yao, are you able to hear
aggressive
us?
when
Yes, Mayor
elected
Medina, Madam
revenue
Clerk, please let
outside
us know.
trouble. What that
Go ahead and
means
go back to you.
in
With that,
particular
board member
engineering
comments and
rules of
questions.
fund
Go
balance.
ahead and move on to
So my
member
question
comments
is
and
that
questions.
maybe it's not as
Very good questions.
when
Part of
elected
that
revenue
is
Clerk, please let us
trying to
know.
address what
what
that
that
Go ahead and
means
go back to you.
in particular
With that, board member comments and questions.
data
Go ahead and
auditors,
move on
but
to
So my
member
we're
question
in
is
the audit
that
of our
maybe it's
program.
not as
Very good questions.
when
Use part of
elected
that
revenue
is trying to address what that means for our program. And so as we call increased cost recovery, we're seeing that we're budgeting more in the audit of our program. Very good questions. Use part of that. That's a part of that is trying to address what that means expenditures for the year. And so as we call increased cost recovery, we're seeing that we're budgeting more as the audit of our program. Very good questions. Use part of that. The biggest piece of that is trying to address what we have to continue to utilize what we call increased to offset data audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting more as the audit of our program. Very good questions. Use part of that. The biggest piece of that is trying to address some have to continue to utilize what we call increased to offset data audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting use of our AFR program. Very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to address some have to continue to utilize what we call increased to offset data audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting use of our AFR program. Very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to address some have to continue to utilize what we call increased to offset data audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting use of our, because you'll see, very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to use some have to fund balance to utilize what we call increased to offset data audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting. The other piece that you'll see, very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to use some have to fund balance to utilize what we call increased to operating audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting. The other piece that you'll see, very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to use some have to fund balance to utilize what we call increased to operating audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting. The other piece that you'll see, very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to use some have to fund balance to utilize what we call increased to operating audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting. The other piece that you'll see, very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to use some have to fund balance to utilize what we call increased to operating audit. We're seeing that we're budgeting. The other piece that you'll see, very good questions. If you're able to, the biggest piece of that is trying to use some you've been drawing down a lot of savings increased to operating audit. What we're having is the other piece that you'll see, the goal is to not grind the biggest thing that we can see you've been drawing down a lot of savings increased to operating audit. What we're having is the other piece that you'll see, the goal is to not grind the biggest thing that we can see you've been drawing down a lot of savings increased to operating audit. What we're having is the other There is not
Member Boris. 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 Great. So Madam Clerk, could you have the speakers again? So one more time. Great. So Madam Clerk, could you have the speakers again? So one more time. Great.
Yeah,
So
can you
Madam Clerk,
unmute
could you have
yourself at
the
this
speakers
time?
again? So one more time. Great.
Yeah,
So
can you
Madam Clerk,
unmute
could you have
yourself at
the
this
speakers
time?
again? So one more time. Technical difficulties. So yeah, sorry to him about that. But moving on with member comments, Member Martinez.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just a question on the public comment between now and our next budget hearing. I know that folks can comment on the website or send emails. Will those comments be public before the hearing, or how will we be able to see them before the next, or is it at the next hearing or before the next hearing?
Good question. I think as those comments come in, typically we share those with governing board members as we get those comments. So we can certainly share them as they come in and probably summarize them as well as part of the public hearing.
Great.
on the 8th.
I would like to see those in the presentation on the 8th. And then just curious, because I know budget hearings are important, and I know there's at least one member of the public here. If you are a member of the public, so not staff, can you raise your hand? Okay, so it looks like we have one member of the public. It would be great to have more participation at the next meeting, and that's particularly why I'm really interested to see how many people we engage in this process between now and the next hearing. As far as what's being proposed tonight, I support the recommendations, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Sure, and I'll move to approve. Oh, wait.
Oh, that's right. We do have
That's
to
right.
close the hearing. That's right. So no, thank you for the
So
correction
never
on that.
mind, I
And
take
we
back the
do,
motion.
Don't have to close the hearing. The hearing will remain open until the next meeting.
Oh, okay, got it.
If you don't mind, I really want to try one more time just to give Mr. Yao a chance to
problem.
speak.
No problem.
It seems like the issue may have corrected itself. Mr. Yao, if you are there and you can hear us, if you could please unmute yourself at this time.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. At the port, our maritime technology is a little bit better than our phone technology, I think. Anyway, thank you for your patience on a long afternoon. I do need to thank you also, and especially for the work that your staff has put into this this budget document that's before you today. The reason is the work that you and your staff put into the SERP, and working on that with working on the MCAS with the port and all the shared initiatives that I think we're now advancing along the waterfront. And some of the examples you already saw, you'll get to see in person later this year, whether it's the first electric tug in the United States or the electric cranes. The APCD had invested in that as well with the infrastructure to support that. There is a lot of work, and so we're really gratified by the $60 million, I think, of incentives in there to support the cleaner projects and equipment that we need for the sustainability in our region, particularly on the waterfront. Looking ahead, you go to the port again, you see the truck transition plan to achieve 40% ZE truck trips. That's gonna call for 50 to upwards of $80 million for replacing the trucks we know need to be transitioned. You know the need is great. That's why you have a budget like this. And so we appreciate the commitment. We appreciate your leadership. We appreciate your partnership. Those aren't just words because you're backing it up. You are, and this budget says that you will again. So we're here to support you as well and cheer you on and appreciate your support, not only with testimony, but a wonderful budget as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes public testimony on this item.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any further questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I think Member Martinez. So the requested action today is as number one, open a public hearing on the we opened. I don't know that we made a motion though. That was action. So we're going to take so I think what we're doing is the requested action. We still have to, well, this is my question actually. So do we have to open the public hearing with an action with the motion? And
That's fine, we can, but.
well, if we don't have to.
Public hearing is already open, you're just going to take action on the requested action, so.
Got it. Okay. So then the requested action, I think the motion that we need would be to item number 2, which is to find that the action is exempt from CEQA per the guidelines. So and I think Member Martinez is going to do the motion.
Yes, so moved.
Okay, so we have a motion by Member Martinez,
I'll second.
second by Member Medina. So Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Bush. Member Burkbeck Garcia,
Burkbeck Garcia, yes.
Member Elo Rivera,
Yes.
Member Gomez,
Yes.
Member Martinez.
Martinez, yes.
Member Medina,
Medina, I.
Member Sanchez, Vice Chair Shu,
Shu, I.
Chair Bush.
Yes.
With members Gloria, Lawson, Reamer, Sanchez, and Vargas absent, that motion passes with those board members who are present voting aye.
Great, thank you. And with that, that concludes our meeting. Thank you, staff, to all your work on the budget and our board. And with that, the next meeting will be held on June 8th, 2023 at 2 p.m. With that, meeting adjourned. Thank you.